different causes, is taking money, using it for his own means, what happens? The rating agencies, they rate them higher than Exxon for compliance, corporate compliance, higher than Exxon. The whole thing falls apart, right? Well, what happened? The SEC issued regulation.
I would highly recommend this guy, who happens to be on Twitter as one of his places, or on the podcast, The Quash. He is able to really articulate problems in our system of governance that I've never heard anybody else articulate in quite the same way. Anyway, be that as it may, let's continue. Okay, we just got done hearing them shovel a bunch of money, a whole bunch of money, like double the amount they had previously authorized, to the private security firms. And then it dawned on me that what actually happened here, and I didn't realize it until then, was that they just privatized union jobs. These fair checkers are supposed to be union jobs, but now they have these private contractors doing fair citations. So they've just privatized union work, and Shirley hasn't said a word about it. Nobody said anything about it, and I just figured it out by accident, basically. Because I'm like the only one that actually pays attention to any of this stuff. Who's gonna go through this inch by inch like me? Nobody's gonna do it because nobody has time and nobody cares. But yeah, I just realized what had happened there. They privatized a bunch of union jobs, and that's really something that Shirley should have been mad about. But we know the deal with Shirley and Sam, and they're both executives in the class of, they have class solidarity being in the executive class. They don't want to go against each other. But yep, that's what I realized yesterday. I mean, they're just shoveling millions into this private security firm when these should be Trimet jobs. Anyway, wait a minute. Let's continue.
Now we're going to move into the part of the meeting where we're going to be looking at three different ordinances. The first one is Ordinance 369, amending the Trimet Code Chapter 28, which addresses the personal conduct of individuals who use the transit system. And this is a second reading, and I'm going to ask General Counsel Devine to read the ordinance by title only.
Ordinance 369. Let's take a look at it. Ordinance 369. Here it is. All right. This is the "we'll ban you forever" thing here. Okay. In 2017, the board adopted number 346, which amended section 2.18 to authorize, for the first time in Trimet history, the general manager, otherwise known as the goddamn king of Trimet, because it's a goddamn monarchy. He runs everything, and the board does what he wants, to issue long-term exclusion to a person who commits serious physical offense to another person. A long-term exclusion means a period of 6 months up to forever. Long-term exclusions are currently imposed on individuals who commit a serious physical offense. Currently, the Trimet Code provides that a first offense would generally result in a long-term exclusion, 6 months to a year, the second offense to an exclusion of more than a year up to forever. However, the general manager, and only the king of Trimet, may issue an exclusion of a year or more for the first offense if the person poses an immediate and serious threat. Okay, so yippee-doo. So what is this one? This ordinance 369 would amend the Trimet Code to expand the number of offenses that can be eligible for long-term exclusion. Add chronic offenders to those long-term exclusions. Eliminate the first and second offense distinction. As a police state strangles us, even the Trimet police state's going to strangle you. Every angle of the police state is coming in for you. Either you be nice to us or we're going to exclude you. It doesn't matter how awful we treat you. Our bus drivers may treat you like garbage, but you can't say anything about it or else we'll exclude you. Ordinance 369 makes Class A misdemeanors under Oregon law eligible for a long-term exclusion. Class A misdemeanors are the more serious crime, blah, blah, blah. Assault for bias crime, second degree, public indecency. It's legal to ride Trimet naked. Harassment that includes offensive sexual contact, as well as possession of a hoax destructive device. That's a good one. Okay. There's been one instance of a bias crime against an operator that was not eligible because a bias crime is in the second degree. Yeah, the bias crime, I don't know about those. You're talking about mentally ill people here, okay? They're not rational people. People in the ditch are not rational people. Anyway, long-term exclusions are not really enforceable, okay? It's basically window dressing because who the hell knows who's excluded and who isn't, so let's go.
President Simmons, ordinance number 369 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, amending Trimet Code Chapter 28 as noted. This is the second reading.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. Mr. General Manager, following our first reading and public hearing, is there anything you'd like to add for the record?
Thanks, President Simmons. Members of the board, if passed, Ordinance 369 would strengthen Trimet's ability to keep riders and employees safe.
Yes, sir.
The ordinance provides the framework for me as the Trimet General Manager to make possible long-term.
Me, as the Trimet King of Trimet, unelected, I get appointed by people who are unelected, and I'm unelected, but I'm king because that's how it works.
Exclusions up to and including a lifetime ban for those who commit the most serious misdemeanor offenses on our.
Let me point out, this is the equivalent of banning people from walking down the road, okay? Banning people from public transportation is the equivalent of banning someone from walking down a road because it's a public service funded by public dollars. And, if you commit a crime on the transit system, you're usually prosecuted in the courts. So this is just window dressing.
Our transit system. It also addresses chronic banned behavior on Trimet buses, trains, and properties. The ordinance targets behavior-based conduct. It does not change penalties for fare evasions. Ordinance 369 was proposed 8 months after the board approved another change to the code that increased penalties for spitting on operators. It is part of a larger effort to make it safer to work on and ride the transit system while addressing nuisance issues to improve the customer experience.
What a bunch of baloney. It's ridiculous. You can't. How are you going to enforce this? You mind explaining to the board how the hell you're going to enforce this?
We have with us today Director of Legal Services, Eric Van Hagen. He's here as our attorney if there are any questions from the board.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, General Manager DeSue. I'll now see if any board member has any questions or any further discussion regarding Ordinance 369.
I think Trimet should implement a system like they do with Lyft. In order to ride the Trimet, you should have to pass a series of tests. You should go in for evaluation. They should get your background. They should make sure that you're employed. They should look at your credit. They need to implement a pass system and make sure only the people that they want, only good people are able to ride their system. All the bad people must be excluded to the ditch.
Director
was under the,
Gonzalez.
thank you, President Simmons. I was under the impression that there was a mechanism in place already for long-term exclusions.
Yes.
Is that sunset, or does this now replace?
Ozzy, you're not paying attention, Ozzy. It's funny when I know more about it than he does.
That, can you give me that context?
I'm going to turn it over to Eric.
Yeah, he doesn't know. Sam doesn't know anything.
Yeah, thank you. So what Ordinance 369 expands sort of the eligibility. So in 2017, when long-term exclusions were first introduced, the requirement was for a felony against a person, which is a pretty high-level classification in terms of crimes. And one of the things we realized, in the intervening 5 years or so since these were first introduced, was that there were a series of situations where you had criminal conduct that didn't reach the level of a felony against a person, particularly misdemeanors against a person that wouldn't qualify. And so that was one of the main areas we wanted to fix. We had situations, for example, of bias crimes against persons that don't involve an assault, physical contact, that are considered misdemeanors under Oregon law. And we felt a sense of frustration that we couldn't take further action against in those kinds of situations. So that was one of the main sort of thrusts behind these modifications to expand eligibility to include misdemeanors and also chronic offenders.
And to that end, with these expanded possibilities, are we now should this pass, would we be able to then enforce a long-term exclusion upon a person who has not gone through the formal judicial system of a misdemeanor or of a felony or something?
Yeah, that's
like
a very
that?
good question, actually. That's an excellent question.
Yeah, and we can do that independently of the judicial process. I think.
Yeah, that's got to be what they're doing is definitely unconstitutional of the Oregon Constitution and the United States Constitution, but we already know they don't answer to anybody. They do what they want, and if you don't like it, you have to sue them. But I mean, it's really unenforceable anyway, because you have to be a high-profile person like the Trimet barber, and even he, I'm sure, could get on a lot of people who know who he is.
I think Director Edwards and I spoke about this at the first reading a little bit. Typically, because when these were first introduced in 2017, we typically kind of trailed the criminal process just because we could. There were so few of them to be felonies. And I think we're going to revisit that for sure. And I think we can act, and I think we probably will act well in advance of the criminal process moving forward.
Yeah, and how can you do that? So this is unconstitutional, folks. They're saying that Trimet is going to be the arbiter of who can ride their system, irregardless of actual law breaking, which is completely unconstitutional. But this is how they roll over there now. They're just a goddamn mess at every level.
In part because we just can't predict when that process or how that process is going to end. And so we need to sort of take action based on what we know.
And thank you for the education. And for myself, Board and Public, should we decide to designate this upon someone and enact it in advance of a judicial process, what is the enforcement mechanism that we would employ, and to what extent would we be able to lean on our agency partners?
Our agency partners. The only way you're going to enforce this is with police. Will they do it? Find out.
So enforcement would be with the hands of our staff who are out on the system on a daily basis. We don't put that on operators. We've never asked operators to enforce other parts of the code, as you guys are well familiar with from FAIR and other issues.
Yeah, you tell them to tell people that FAIR is required, you lying piece of shit. You actually tell them that.
So that would be your, field operations and security staff who are out on the system on a regular basis and encounter folks. They would be principally responsible for enforcement of those activities.
Do we have, is there precedent in other agencies where this has been adopted and it's been applied, and we have agency staff?
Yeah, I certainly know Eugene uses this a lot in LTD.
Nope.
I'm pretty sure other systems do as well. I don't know if Sam's shaking his head,
I knew New Jersey just adopted a similar thing.
Mr. General Manager, if you have
Yeah,
other
absolutely.
examples.
It was used in Kansas City just as well as in Seattle.
Seattle? Yeah. I don't know.
Thank you. And does this prompt Title VI?
Yeah.
No.
Good questions from Ozzy today.
All right.
No, I don't think it would.
No.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Director Edwards?
I think we may have talked about this before, but I just wanted to get it cleared up for sure. If folks have mental health issues, this could be very impactful.
Yes.
At the same,
Yes, that's right. Now that's the thing that is not being discussed. A lot of these people acting in these ways are mentally ill, or they're in the street in a ditch. And as somebody has pointed out, you expect people in the ditch being disregarded by society to be polite and be nice when you leave them in the ditch. You're out of your fucking minds. That's why there's so much hatred for operators right now, because they're just leaving so many people in the ditch that people have gotten to hate operators. I mean, they just have a terrible reputation because of the way they're handling all these customers.
same time, is there an
Not customers. That's what they refer to them as. But they're not customers. That's a psyop. They're riders and they're captives. You know, people that are using Trimet don't have any other choice.
appeal process?
It better be.
If I have a mental health issue and then I address that issue and get some certified help, then can I appeal this?
Absolutely. There's a couple layers of appeal. There's the initial appeal of the decision up front to issue for the general manager to issue the exclusion. There's an appeal process there that can go to the court system in what's called a writ of review. So there's that when the decision is initially made, and then there's an ongoing opportunity, depending on the length of the exclusion, to show change behavior.
Yeah, I don't see that written down anywhere. Is it written down? Is there any? Let me just see. No, there's nothing, no additional.
And in fact, when we revised the general manager's rules that sort of detail out kind of the next level of detail after this, even working with our safety response team in demonstrating exactly what you just mentioned, the whether it's rehabilitation or other steps that are taken to change these underlying behaviors, that they can be revisited. And I think that's an important aspect of our approach, which is to get people off the system when there's a security threat, but give them then the opportunity to get back on through changed behavior.
Thank you.
I don't see anything to that effect on here.
Okay, seeing no further questions or comments, I'm going to ask the General Counsel, Ms. Devine, to hold the roll call vote.
Thank you, President Simmons. I'll start with Director Kim, who is participating virtually. Director Kim?
Yes.
Director Gonzalez?
No.
Director Bauman?
Yes.
No, good for him.
Director Edwards?
Good for you, Ozzy. I'm proud of you. Good man, Ozzy. You saw through it.
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
And Director Simmons?
Yes.
Where's Wade?
Ordinance 369 passes.
Is Wade there?
Thank you. Next, we have two for.
All right. That concludes that shit show. Over and out to the next one.